Another character created in the throes of
Mr. Snoid. He wasn't created. He was there. I saw him. He was there. He was lurking around and giggling at and laughing at me. Mr. Snoid.
Now this stuff just seems to have bubbled up from your
It bubbled up, yeah. The vulture goddesses also, that just came bubbling up. They were there. I saw them, you know.
But maybe it took the drugs for you to see them.
Yes,
or
it
as
did.
vividly as you did.
It was all the results of those drug visions.
I wanted to talk about Zap. I think the first issue of Zap came out in 1967. I think there's a slide of Zap.
Well, we came out in early '68, but I did them in late '67.
Now, can you give me a context for Zap?
Well,
yeah, there's a quotation about Zap.
Well, you know, first I was drawing for those underground newspapers. All the early strips in '67 were done for in California, New York, any place. Philadelphia. I did them for all over the place. And then somebody said, well, why don't you do a whole comic and I'll just publish the whole comic. That was this Brian Zahn in Philadelphia. I thought, wow, what an opportunity. You know, I was really excited about that possibility. This guy's offering to publish the comic, a whole comic. So I set to work. In a space of 2 months, I turned out 2 comics, Zap 0 and 1. I sent him all the artwork for number 1, and he made off with it. I never heard from him again. Fortunately, I had made a photocopy. Thank God I had the sense to make a photocopy.
Which is surprising.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I had some reason why I did. I don't remember anyway. So once I had the material, then I found Don Donahue, and he said he knew this guy with a printing press, Charles Plymell, and that he would print it, and we could sell it ourselves. So that's what we did. He printed them on this little printing press, multi-lith printing press, and we folded them and stapled them and took them around to the shops in Haight-Ashbury, and the rest is history.
Were you who paid for this? Who paid for the printing?
Don Donahue.
Okay.
He traded Charles Plymell a tape recorder for the printing job.
Those are the days.
Yeah, that's how we got started.
But you were essentially sort of a co-publisher. I mean, you went out and helped sell it.
Yeah, more or less. It was very loose. You know, we didn't have anything written down. We didn't establish our positions exactly. But.
And then how were you paid for that?
They're paid. Well, if the stores paid us, that's how we got paid.
Right.
You know. And then a few months after the Zap Comix was out in circulation, then the Print Mint, a San Francisco poster printing company, approached us and said, let us take over the whole business part of this. You just draw the comics and we'll print them. And I said, great. Okay, great. You take care of the business. You get them printed. You take the distribution, that stuff. Because they were into doing psychedelic posters. And then Don Donahue felt kind of bad because he was cut out of that. So then we did more comics. We did Snatch comics and all that, and he printed those and all kinds of other titles. And he was very slow, you know. He did this little tiny press, and he drank a lot. He was drinking whiskey. I used to go to the printing office, and Donahue would be standing there with his bottle of whiskey in one hand, and the press was running, and all the printed pages would just be flying out all over the floor. I said, Don, what? He said, well, that's a good way to let the ink dry on the pages. And then I gather them up later.
He had it down.
Yeah.
Was this
slow.
Was this like a little AB offset press?
It was a multi-lith 1250.
There you go.
know. It's still around somewhere. I think Dan Fogel or somebody like that has it.
Right. It'll be on eBay next week.
Right. That's right.
And of course, this is one of your most iconic conceptions.
Is this image known in India? Yeah, keep on trucking.
Have you ever seen it? No, you haven't seen it?
It was hugely popular in the United States for a long time, 20, 30 years. It was made into lots of different merchandise and kind of ruined my life, really. It became too popular.
This became a gigantic counterculture icon and a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Well, so explain why it was a nightmare. I mean,
okay,
25 words or less.
All right. It was so marketable as merchandise. So all these little merchandise companies, little outfits, started making objects out of it, like notebook covers, plastic pillows, buttons, badges. It appeared in all kinds of little things like that. It was all over the place. And they even started using it for logos for like radio stations and stuff like that. And so then I had this lawyer who was supposed to just handle some of the copyright business and all that. And he said, Robert, these people are making a lot of money off your Keep on Truckin'. We got to sue them and we got to make them pay and da-da-da. And I was young. I was still only in my 20s. So I said, oh, okay. All right. I should have told him to let it go. Never mind. I don't care. But I didn't. I thought, all right, okay. So then, it was just dragged on, and I had to go to these depositions for these lawsuits, and just like you were talking about the other day. So it was awful. And then this judge finally decided, since he hated my lawyer was such an asshole, to declare the thing public domain. So then for years it was public domain, but then
you regained the rights somehow.
Yeah, they changed the copyright laws so that then I was allowed to have it back. But then recently I decided to let it go, let them use it.
Oh, really?
So now anybody wants to use it, hey, anybody want to print any merchandise or posters of this image? It's all yours. Go ahead. Be my guest. Me to you. Go ahead, make some money. Keep on trucking. I don't know if they'll get it, but I don't know.
They can start trucking here in India. I want to talk to you briefly about another one of your most enduring characters. Yeah. Well, he endured for a few years before you put an ice pick in his head.
Right.
But Fritz the Cat, was he also a product of your drug-induced haze?
He became before LSD. I was drawing these Fritz the Cat comics before, way back to my teenage.
And after.
And after, yeah. And
now, is this character known here?
Did you see the animated cartoon? Yeah. Oh, did you like it? Yes. Yeah? I thought it was pretty awful myself. The animated cartoon, I didn't like it very much, and I had nothing to do with it. That also became a nightmare.
Robert hated that cartoon.
Yeah, I didn't like it, yeah. And I said so publicly that I didn't like it in magazine interviews and stuff. So Ralph Bakshi, the creator of the animated cartoon, who put his whole life into that animated cartoon of Fritz the Cat, Ralph Bakshi hates me because I've said in print that I thought the film was no good.
Well, you've been bad-mouthing him for 45 years.
No, I've driven him crazy. I think I really deranged him. Poor guy.
Well, now, Fritz the Cat started out as a very, very sweet-natured character.
These are stories I did when I was like 18 years old.
1962.
Early ones, right. Yeah.
But it was very sweet, very romantic.
Right.
And
I was still a virgin then. I was very sweet and romantic.
That explains that.
I was a 19th century romantic. I believed love was all, Love was everything. Now I'm very cynical and bitter.
And that, I was going to say, that ended when?
This is 1972, so it didn't take long. After the Fritz the Cat movie came out, I decided I had to kill this character. So I had an irate ostrich girlfriend stab him in the back of the head with an ice pick. Yeah.
It was a great death for one of the great deaths of a cartoon character.
Right. So then Ralph Bakshi came out with this cartoon called The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat.
Marketing genius.
Yeah, I kept him alive for another 5 years. Bad animated cartoons. That's my true self right there.
Your inner self. Yeah.
Kind of a depressed guy.
Now, I think you once referred to the 1970s as sort of a lost decade. You don't like the work you did in the 70s?
Yeah, I kind of lost my direction after I stopped taking LSD and that whole source of inspiration wore off. And I was having to deal with this keep on trucking shit and all this nonsense and bullshit that came out of the fame, the attention that I was getting. Just had people constantly wanting something from you, Hi, Mr. Crumb, let's do this, do that, do the other thing. And it was very, for me, I was not fit to cope with that kind of attention. I was not made for that. It's really killing me.
Now, can everyone read this? I think this is a great quote about Robert's feelings during that period.
Aggressive people who want to ride your coattails, and if you don't, they will kill you. Last year at this time, I wanted to commit suicide. What year is this?
I had the year on the slide. I'm not sure what happened to it.
I wonder which time that was when I wanted to commit suicide. Out of the many times I wanted to commit suicide.
Right. I think it was
85, 86.
I think you were referring to the early 70s.
I don't know. Maybe. There were many times when I felt that way.
Probably every decade at some point.
Every 5 years or so. It's about a 5-year cycle where I want to kill myself.
Robert's work can be broken down somewhat artificially into phases, and roughly by decades. And I happen to think that every phase is good. In different ways. I do.
Appreciate that. There's a lot of people say, you haven't done anything good since the 60s. You haven't done anything good since you moved to France.
No, they were all different, but they were all superb in their own ways. Now, you don't think much of your 70s work.
Well, after about 1973 up to about 1980, that period in there, I don't know. It's kind of aimless, sort of, I don't know. Stuff I did for arcade and all that. I don't know.
I thought it was good work. I reread all of Robert's work.
You reread all my work?
Yeah, there's about 2,000 pages of comics or so.
Oh my God! Why? Sheesh! I don't think
what I detected in the 70s is that you tended to express futility more directly and overtly than you had in the past. And so I came up with some of these strips, which I thought.
The optimism of the 60s, it kind of just...
all gone.
Just fell apart for all the hippies, And it's kind of, there's a drug burnout thing, and, my life was chaos and mess.
You had tax problems. You felt under the gun.
Yeah.
And the underground movement was sort of collapsing.
There was that, too, yeah. It was just... Everything seemed to be kind of falling apart in the 70s of the whole thrust of the 60s, the whole hippie culture, and they just ate away at it, and it just broke up, and And there was even that period in the early 70s of the revolution, 1969 to about 72, when people, me included, really thought the revolution was going to happen. And that kind of excited people. And at that time I very much admired Spain and his artwork, and his attitudes. And he was kind of a mentor for me about the political thing, kind of clarified some of the politics for me. I was very extremely left-wing, revolutionary. And then I did that comic strip, Frosty the Snowman, where I had Frosty throwing bombs at the Rockefeller Mansion, blowing up the Rockefeller Mansion. And then the IRS came after me after that. The tax people in the American government just started hunting me down and grinding me down. They took all my money out of my bank account and left me bereft. And it was a nightmare for about 4 years till I finally managed to pay him off, get him off my back. And that was the whole late 70s, basically.
Yeah. The 60s essentially, the 60s in America essentially lasted to about 72, right? Roughly.
Well, it's hard to
something like that
to nail down precisely, but just kind of the curve of that optimism of our generation just started to go down in the 70s, and it broke up into all these different groups. You had the revolutionaries, then you had the spiritual people that were seeking like Eastern religions, and then you had the sex liberation people and the gays and all the people that just went just into whole hog hedonism, the most, Plato's retreat, kind of just fucking their brains out till they all got, bad diseases, and then you had AIDS and all that crap, So that's kind of what happened to the 60s.
Can you just explicate very briefly what you thought this revolution was supposed to be about?
That's a good question. What was the revolution supposed to bring about? Just get rid of all the nasty people in the government and shit.
Brother.
Well, there was some fundamental like socialist ideology that we shouldn't have large corporations running things, and we shouldn't have this privileged class of people with hogging everything and all the money and shit, like stuff like that.
That idea didn't go anywhere.
Well, no, it came up against the wall.
And now, I started reading Underground Comix around '72 when the revolution was over. I was buoyed by it. I was excited by it, and then everyone said, "Nah, that's over."
That was last year. Come on, Gary.
Yeah.
That was so 1969.
Very disappointed
Yeah.
when I discovered that everything I was discovering was gone.
Yep.
Whoops. Let me go
Dense.
back if I can.
These things are dense.
This is one of your strips
Jesus,
for
dense.
for arcade. And this is what I was talking about earlier when. I mean, this is post LSD. I guess you were still being affected by it, but.
This is the Bearsy Wearsies? Is that what that is?
Yes,
I can't even see
yes,
it.
it is.
That's just
you
kind
had,
of.
you had what, 16 panels on a page? Each panel
I think
is.
that was inspired by my new relationship with Aileen. It's kind of during the honeymoon period of me and Aileen. That was the first relationship I had with a woman where I really, got along with her. Could really hang out and have a good time.
So she inspired you to draw densely textured comics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can everybody see that? We can't really make it out from our point of view.
That's okay. Never mind.
No,
You don't
okay.
have to see it.
And here's another one called That's Life, 1975.
Right. Yeah, that's inspired by my interest in old time music.
Exactly.
Old blues and stuff like that.
And very respectful of that whole
Romantic.
mode.
Was romantic about it.
Yes.
Beyond respectful.
That's true.
I had a romance about it. And also I got into playing music a lot in the 70s. That's one thing I started doing. I got this band going and started hanging out with them. So I had this, like, for the first time in my life, this kind of group of buddies that I could hang out with, these other musicians that were playing into old time music. And that was kind of fun. That was more fun than drawing comics.
Well, didn't you hang out with underground cartoonists in the 60s, friends?
Yeah, I hung out with Spain a little bit and Wilson a little bit. But Wilson got to be hard to take because he just kept getting deeper and deeper into drinking till he was completely drunk and incoherent. So I kind of gave up on Wilson, gave up hanging around with him.
Yeah.
Couldn't.
I don't think he got any
Couldn't do
easier
it.
to take over the years. But
No.
Yeah. Did you play music in the 60s? Did you play an instrument?
Just right at the end of the 60s. I always fooled around myself, by myself. But right at the end, 69, 70, I got involved with Al Dodge and Robert Armstrong, the other guys, Terry Zwigoff, that were also liked old-time music, It's hard to find guys that were like that old music.
But you were always obsessed with music. I mean, as a kid.
Yeah, from starting at the age of, 15, 16, I started collecting those 78s,
Yeah.
which
And-
I'm still doing to this day.
And what instrument did you play? Was it the ukulele?
I played ukulele and a little bit of guitar and fooled around with this and that. But I didn't really get serious till I got involved with those guys in the 70s, and then I got a real instrument.
Now, I think this is one of the earliest
Yeah.
collaborations with Aileen.
Yeah.
Um,
That's Aileen draws
1977.
herself, and I draw myself, and she wrote her dialogue, and I wrote mine. Kind of like the comics I did with my brother Charles. We'd pass it back and forth, and we'd each do our own part, playing ourselves. And that was very easy to do. It was easy. Aileen was easy to work with. She always came up with something funny to say, always, and never at a loss for some kind of humorous comeback, some funny one-liner. She always had that. It's like a natural-born Jewish comedian.
Did you have an immediate kinship with Aileen when you met
Yeah,
her?
it did. Yeah, it was happened pretty fast. Yeah.
Tell us a little about how you met Aileen.
Spain brought her to a party at my old girlfriend Kathy's house, and Spain and Janet, his girlfriend, kept saying, for a long time, you got to meet Aileen. She's just like just like your fantasy, you got to meet her. And so finally we met, and yeah, we hit it off. It was good.